Pod. Welcome back, Pod, to another episode of Say Who Say Pod. He's Danny O'Neil in a sports coat. I'm Christian Caple. The Washington Huskies are 6-3 after a 13-10 loss to a Wisconsin team that proved far more challenging than by Danny. No slide up the rankings this week for Washington.
Yeah, that was one of those that's gonna sting for a while when the opposing team is led in passing by the punter and you lose. That's a tough look. It's a tough look. That was a tough game for this Sterling offense.
It was snowy and cold in Madison.
Did not look pleasant.
It's always a far more pleasant experience though at Chuck Olson Kia.
Heck yeah, it is.
This episode, again, is brought to you by our good friends at Chuck Olson Kia in Shoreline. Family owned and operated since 1964. Family owned and operated by a family of University of Washington graduates with a friendly, low-pressure sales staff and a competitively priced selection of vehicles. We hope you'll make Chuck Olson Kia in Shoreline your next vehicle buying destination. If you do, I think you need to ask for Henry Olson.
You certainly should.
And if you talk to Henry Olson, I think you need to tell him that Say Who Say Pod sent you.
You absolutely have to do that. And I would say that among the issues that Washington had, it was not a friendly low-pressure defense.
No.
On either side of the ball. Like, I thought Washington's defense played pretty well, and Wisconsin's defense certainly played really well.
Yeah, Wisconsin's not a good football team. This is an inexcusable loss, but that is not a bad defense. Like, you don't look at the scores of Wisconsin's losses this year and think, oh, wow, they can't stop anybody. And, you know, we talked about this with the 2021 Huskies. When you can't move the ball or score points, it puts a tremendous amount of pressure on your own defense. And their numbers are like middle of the pack in a lot of ways, which is hard to do when you have a bad offense. So
it's not just a bad offense. It's an awful offense. Like, it is a non-functional offense. It's one of those special breeds of offense that causes everything around it to cave in because they're just non-functional.
They are inert.
Yes. They ran a high school offense. They went out there and put a high school offense on the field. And you know what? That's what the results look like. It looked like a high school offense when they had the ball.
And so the one thing you cannot do when playing that kind of opponent is give them the ball at the 7-yard line. Mm-hmm. The one thing you can't do, Jedd Fisch has said that. I suppose you could debate the merits of calling a pass play that requires a drop like that on 3rd and 12 backed up after a couple false starts and asking the quarterback to try to make a play in those conditions where, hey, like the odds of Damon Williams Jr. losing a fumble in that spot are very low, right? It's not something he does. So it's not like that's a high probability of disaster play, but you know, you remove the possibility of disaster by just running the ball up the middle and punting. But then you're not punting well. You don't punt well.
Yeah.
You're giving them good field position anyway. So I don't mind trying to be aggressive and get the first down there, but it does put you in the position where the only way you're letting this team back in the game can now happen by asking the quarterback to drop back in the pocket and maybe move around and try to make something happen.
They lost this game because their offense stunk, right? Like,
yes, 100%.
And the turnover is part of that. But even then, they're still in position to win it if their offense just doesn't unambiguously stink. Washington lost this game because its offense was less functional, more inert than the other team's totally inert high school offense. And some of that comes on how the quarterback played. It's tough weather. Some of it comes the absence of your best running back, though I thought Adam Muhammad ran pretty hard. It wasn't one of those situations where I was like, oh, they just don't have anybody else to run the ball. They couldn't do anything against Wisconsin, and it doesn't undermine all of the progress that we've seen from the offense this year. or the fact that I think that the offense is in general pretty good, but it shows you the limitations. And I'm interested to see how they respond to that, because they got pantsed. The best unit on this team, the thing that you're supposed to, they got pantsed in front of everybody on a tough night in Wisconsin.
So I know that the answer is nowhere near this level. I know it's somewhere below this, but I am just curious through your eyes, if you can reflect back to September 4th, 2021, and the emotion you felt stepping onto the subway platform after taking in some U.S. Open tennis and then learning that the Washington Huskies had lost their season opener to Montana. Compare how you felt about this loss to that one. I know it's not there, but how far away is it?
It's incredibly far away. I'm trying to think of other more discouraging losses that I've seen in recent vintage. But the feeling that I had watching this game was that's the sort of thing that can happen to a young offense that's not quite there yet. This is the scar tissue that needs to develop for a team. I saw this as the kind of setback that teams need to go through as they were toughening up. And this sort of confirmed some of the things that I was saying last week about, look, this team is not going to win a playoff game, right? Like, just the quality of this team, they shouldn't have lost it. It's embarrassing and it looks bad. But when you watched how it happened, it's not completely shocking that you have an offense that goes out and lays an egg against a physical defense in a tough road environment in bad weather. It's not something that makes me reevaluate everything from stem to stern on the program the way the Montana, like, that was the Montana is like, everything I thought about this team was wrong. This loss was, people might have been getting ahead of themselves a little bit, and I was right not to think that they've arrived yet.
That's a very level-headed evaluation. To me, it's got a little bit of a if not Wisconsin, then who feel to it. They did beat Maryland, should be noted.
Yes.
And I think that the hole that they dug for themselves had folks coming away from that game feeling a lot better than you probably, we said going into that game, look, there's no bad way to win. Mm-hmm. Maryland was coming off a bye. Washington's going across the country after playing probably the best team in the country at home. And they don't have Carver Willis. They don't have Zach Durfee. I think there's still concern about the way that they came out and performed in that game, that you fall behind 20-0 against a Maryland team that, like, we now know not actually that good. Got some dudes on defense. They got some young talent. They had some size, had some physicality. But I don't know. Like, I came away from that game thinking, hey, this is progress, that they were able to erase this deficit, that they kept playing. They clearly, this was not a matter of like energy or poise or whatever. They stuck with it and they came out with a win. That's huge. So to have them go and then lay an egg like this, and Michigan's a little bit of a different story. That's a lot better team. Mm-hmm. They were in the game till the last 16 and a half minutes. This just feels like a gigantic step backwards. And that it comes amid the backdrop of rumors about Jedd Fisch's potential candidacy at a couple other jobs, I think only adds to the fan unrest.
So I have asked myself over the past few days, because I've seen a great deal of pretty intense hostility toward Jedd Fisch on Twitter. And the couple questions that I've had have been, A, is this just a Twitter thing? Is that a reflection you have the way college football fans interact on Twitter it is not indicative of your overall fan base. But I do get the sense that it's more than just Twitter, that their Husky fans are really angry specifically at Fisch for this performance. And that's how much of that blends into the dialogue that's been going around, or the question about how long Fisch is for this job. And I don't think it's helpful to conflate those two issues. I don't think they're related to each other. That's what I should say. I don't think that Washington lost this way because Jedd Fisch is thinking about his future outside of Washington. I think that this game happened because you had an offense that was playing in bad weather that we've seen it lose its rhythm before, especially on the road. And when you have an injury to Jonah Coleman and you have a lack of availability of Denzel Boston, like these are, and Washington didn't respond well to any of that. And they looked really bad on offense. This doesn't make me question Jedd's entire approach at the school, but I do get the sense that there are some people who do feel that way, that this was a referendum on him in general.
I think you can separate the two. I think you can set aside any belief that like, oh, they played this way because the team's distracted because they are afraid the coach is going to leave. First of all, like, I mean, no team is a monolith, right? There's 100-some guys on the roster. They all feel a slightly different way about every single thing, right? They're all human beings. Their families all feel a slightly different way about every single thing. Their own two parents might feel slightly different ways from each other on every different thing. So I'm not saying like none of this exists, but the sport has never been more of a business. And that's leaked into the players more than ever. Like, probably not all, but a good number of these guys have agents themselves. Mm-hmm. And a number of them chose Washington because Washington probably put the best NIL offer in front of them, and or are hearing from their agent that, hey, this is what the transfer market might look like if you enter the portal, and they all know damn well that if they are attached to this coaching staff, they can just go with them if they leave. So like, it's not like, 1994 where right. If a coach left, it was like, oh my God, like going to be abandoned. I'm going to have no choice but to stay and play for the next guy. Like, so I don't know that those anxieties like seep into the mind of the average player the way that they used to. Doesn't mean that they don't at all. Doesn't mean that one guy might feel totally differently than another guy. And obviously the seniors, guys with expiring eligibility, have no real reason to care about this. So the only way that influences anything is if you believe that Jedd Fisch is so focused on like either leveraging Washington or trying to get another job that he's somehow not putting in the hours at work, which I don't believe at all.
Yeah.
I don't think that's reasonable or feasible to think. And I don't think he's that kind of guy.
That, and even if you look at it from a totally self-interested standpoint, he's got to win.
You'd be working harder than ever,
job.
Right?
Like you can't, the finishing with eight victories, going 8-4 looks much different than if you're talking about going 10-2. Like he's got every incentive. So yeah, I would tend to agree with you. Any of the noise, I think you would have it if we were talking about psychological reasons. It's way more likely that they felt they had it made in the shade after the way they'd been playing, as opposed to, the uncertainty of what's next at Washington. And I just generally think that when players get in games, that all of that sort of psychological backdrop fades away, and it's what it looks like on the field and feels like on the field. And if you get into a bad stretch of plays, can you knock yourself out of it? And Washington in this game was absolutely not able to do that in the way that they were against Maryland.
So that's one piece of this. Let's set aside any thought that distraction or lack of focus because of the coaching carousel had anything to do with the loss. That doesn't mean that it's not really, really irritating for a fan base to see its head coach's name attached to openings, to see news. First, I mean, that Newsweek story. I mean, give me a break. To see Newsweek aggregating 24/7 sports and throwing the most clickbait headline on it possible. And I don't say any of that to dismiss the idea that like Jedd Fisch might be a candidate at UCLA or might ultimately even end up there. I don't know. I know what journalism is, and I know what aggregation is, and I know which of those that story falls under. And then go out and oversee a performance like that one
Mm-hmm.
And also, I don't think it's lost on fans that Curt Cignetti signed a huge extension pretty much immediately after the Penn State job opened. He's not going anywhere. Rhett Lashley, extension at SMU. Matt Rule, extension at Nebraska. Dan Lanning is perfectly happy every time he's asked to affirm strongly his commitment to Oregon. And frankly, I think it's genuine. I believe him. I think he's at the job he wants to be at. And so when you don't get anything even approaching that, the first couple times the subject is broached with Jedd Fisch, okay, fine. What's he going to say? And if he does say anything, are you going to believe him anyway? It's it's that time of year. It's that business. That's how it goes. While all these other coaches kind of do make some sort of confirmation or commitment, and then you go out and lose to Wisconsin 13-10. I think it's, and to be fair, like, when I asked Jedd Fisch if he'd been approached about a contract extension, he said they hadn't talked about any of it. So, I don't know. I don't know how much you take that to the bank or not.
So, okay. I am not privy to any, I do not attempt to be a reporter about coach contracts. So I don't know anything. I don't even, and you can tell him, Christian, I don't ask you about what do I think is, what do you think is going on, or have there been any, if both sides wanted to reaffirm sort of their working relationship, they could do that. That would be very easy. And this idea that we haven't gotten around to talking, or we haven't, that doesn't really wash. Like that, just on the surface of it. And it can either mean that the school's not interested in talking, or the coach isn't interested in hearing. But the whole, like, we haven't just gotten around to doing it yet. I don't care to hear lip service. So if there's not something to say about a contract, and this is my own personal opinion, I don't want to hear platitudes from a coach. I would prefer he did what Jedd Fisch did over the past 2 weeks. I recognize that I'm not alone, and some people would prefer at least someone mouth the words that makes them feel like he's happy to be here, which he chose not to do. And maybe that's an attempt to be more straightforward and honest. And maybe that is sort of its own kind of messaging. But Jedd opted not to do the platitudes that would make a certain number of people feel like he's really happy to be here. And that has its own consequences, which I guess when you come to Wisconsin, here would be my question to you. If they don't lose to Wisconsin, or maybe even if they don't lose in the way they did to Wisconsin, do you think he makes the statement he did this week when you asked him about it?
We'll never know, right? I mean, I totally understand people who would say no. He's only saying that now because he lost some leverage, whatever. That could be true. I honestly, and I don't know this for a fact, just my kind of reading between the lines. I think that Newsweek headline got to him.
That pissed him off.
Because it brought his family into it. Which I've avoided discussing publicly. Because I just didn't think it was quite appropriate. He acknowledged it in his response to my question on Monday, so it's out in the open now. And the fact that he acknowledged and the fact that he brought that up specifically, to me, felt like a reaction to it sort of becoming a little more mainstream, if we can call Newsweek mainstream anymore.
So what's so funny is, people who are listening, Newsweek is a respected brand in terms of the history of media. What Newsweek is now is a zombie ship. Like, it is not that news magazine that it was 20 years ago at all. So it's really funny when you have sort of a brand that still carries some weight, but you're like, what's actually going into those stories is completely unrelated to the history of this publication.
So again, that's speculation and just analysis on my part. Maybe it had nothing to do with that. I got that story sent to me by so many people.
I know.
The headline was something else. So, and again, like that's not me saying like oh, Jedd Fisch and UCLA isn't a thing, because I don't know. I know what's responsible and what's not.
Yeah.
So I think that there was so much noise out there, and that kind of represented the peak of it, at least to this point, that maybe that played a factor too. So I'm the one who asked him that question.
Mm-hmm.
I framed it in the way of like, at 6-3 and with no more path to the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
This year, and I don't know how you see this, but I would think that most fans now see the rest of this year as, hey, how much better can this team get? How much more meaningful action can these freshmen and sophomores get? How close can they get this program to a place where you feel like by the end of the season, whether that's their bowl game, whatever, maybe even leaving Husky Stadium on November 29th, how far can they get? How close can they get to convincing fans? Because I don't think they're that far, even with this loss. Convincing fans that, like, this team can get good enough by next year to compete for a playoff spot.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the case, if that's what the rest of this year is about, I think it's hard for people to get totally excited about that when they don't know if this roster is going to be this roster next year. And so I asked Jedd Fisch a version of this question relative to his name appearing on lists, so to speak, in particular for the UCLA and Florida job, and this is what he said.
I would say those lists are made by people that have no idea what's going on. Honestly, they don't know what's happening in our program. They have no idea how excited I am about the youth in our program. They have no idea how excited I am about the fact that we're playing 6 or 7 true freshmen. No idea how excited I am about the fact that Damon Williams, I believe, has a chance over the next year or 2 years after this to be one of the all-time best quarterbacks that have come through this area. I don't think that they would know how I enjoy coaching here, that we've spent a ton of money into building this program the way we want to build it, that I had a great hand in all the facilities. I was a big part of making the decisions on how we wanted to recreate this space, to give our players an unbelievable opportunity to have a recovery room that they never had, working on making sure that they have the best nutrition they could possibly have, give them great new meeting rooms, new office spaces for our coaches.
It's an interesting approach in terms of saying they don't know how much I like what I've done here. And I should be very clear that I was angry at part of his response. We haven't gotten to that part yet. And it doesn't really have much to do with anything he said other than his approach. But it is an interesting approach for a coach to take, to talk about what he's done here and what the school has done for him here as an answer for his desire to remain here. I think that's there's nothing he could have said that would have made me feel like, oh, he's staying here for sure. Because the only thing that will make me feel that way is a new contract. And I think that's just a recognition of the reality of how this goes. But it's an interesting approach, Christian.
It is. Do you want to play the rest of it?
Yep. Here's the second half of it.
I think, unfortunately, what happens is they just want to tie coaches to lists, and then we have to sit there and defend it rather than just be able to just tell our fans, like, our players, our coaching staff, myself, my family, we love coaching at the University of Washington. And the ridiculousness of people that want to claim that because my wife and daughters are living in Arizona, because I have a 16-year-old who's been in 5 different schools in the last 8 years to finish her high school, has anything to do with my decision, or the ridiculousness of just putting my name on a list just to do it. Only that does affect recruiting. It affects our team. It affects our staff. And my hope is that our players, our coaches, our families understand how much we love it at Washington.
This is the part that pissed me off. And the reason it pisses me off is because he's complaining about the result of a system that is entirely structured for his benefit and that of other coaches. He would prefer that you never mention the possibility that he leave until he actually leaves, because that's what's fair. And my response to that is, if you don't want any of this speculation to happen, if you feel it's unfair, well, then make it clear that it's unwarranted instead of just saying it's ridiculous, because it doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from a recognition of how this worked last time, how you ended up here, how college coaches in general tend to move, and his history specifically. Like, it's the idea that it's unfair or that he is somehow put upon by this. I feel it shows a lack of recognition of how many things in college coaching circles are set up strictly for the benefit of the freaking coaches.
Yeah, it's all in the game, right?
Exactly. Don't get mad at me that the game is going on when you're the one whose benefit the game is structured for. That I don't resent the game. I resent you complaining about the game.
Also, like, shouldn't a coach fire his agent if he's not on lists?
It's such an interesting question.
That's what they're there for, right?
Kind of, yeah. But like, that's the whole thing of it's just college coaching and NFL coaching contracts are completely different, and there are a number of reasons for them. But one of the facts is that the reason that people speculate on sitting coaches taking jobs is because sitting coaches have contracts that do not prevent them, are structured in such a way that they could take another job if they want it.
I think Washington fans did get a little bit, and I'm going to say spoiled. You could argue that this is the way it should be, and I wouldn't disagree. Got a little bit spoiled by the fact they had a head coach for 6 years who didn't have an agent.
Chris, yeah.
He had an attorney, who worked on when it was time for an extension and when it was time for a new deal, when he came from Boise State to Washington. But Chris Peterson did not have somebody working on his behalf to involve his name in as many searches as possible Could you imagine? Could you imagine if Jimmy Sexton represented Chris Peterson? How many jobs his name would have been attached to? How many times they'd have been coming back to Washington to pay him more and more and more. Like, if Chris Peterson's priority, even if he'd never wanted to leave Washington, if his priority had been, I want to make as much money as possible, he could have made a lot more than they were paying him.
That's probably
important to him.
Yeah.
Okay. Their next head coach was Jimmy Lake, who was represented, probably still is, by Jimmy Sexton. And what did he do every offseason? Leverage, 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 going to play the game, do the dance. And to be fair, he was a legit candidate by that point for other defensive coordinator openings. Alabama tried to poach him. Eventually head coach openings. I think he turned down Colorado his last offseason there. I think knew he had a good thing going at Washington, knew he could get paid at a really high level as an assistant there, and was not in a hurry to leave, but that didn't mean that his agent wasn't going to be out in the cycle doing his thing. Kalen DeBoer came to Washington not represented by Jimmy Sexton, and then signed on with CAA and Jimmy Sexton early in the 2023 season, or at least after it was underway. So that was the one move that kind of,
right,
that's interesting. And Jedd Fisch is not with Jimmy Sexton. He's with Doug Hendrickson, who works at Wasserman, and we've talked about this. But Washington has been subject since Chris Peterson's resignation to the agent game in a way that it just flat out was not at all throughout his entire tenure. And I think people are getting kind of sick of it, but also you should probably get used to it because that's just how it works.
Yeah, you're right. I would like to say this, though. It's not just the agent game. The coaches are the ones whose benefit this is done for. It is very convenient for coaches to throw up their hands and sort of the agent becomes something they can point to as I didn't do that. The agents are doing these things for their client's benefit. Like, none of this would be happening if the coaches didn't want that leverage generated. If the coaches didn't sign off on the agent's program of, hey, if you want to get a raise, this is how you do it. So it is the agent game, but that agent is a reflection of the coach's ambition. And you're right about Chris Peterson and Washington lucking out. Even before Chris Peterson ended up at Washington, if his goal had been to get the biggest, highest paying job he could, he would have never been the Huskies coach. He would have been out of Boise State years before it ended up happening. Washington got fortunate that Washington was a job that Chris Peterson wanted. And that's clearly, if you look at Jedd Fisch's history, and I'm not saying this is a negative, he is clearly someone who is seeking to climb as high as he can in the coaching profession. And the idea of continuity and stability is of lesser importance to him than getting a better, higher paying, more prominent job.
The other side of the extension dance is that, like, I mean, I've said on this show, I think Washington should do what it can to have the same coaching staff next year. I think it's to their benefit to have the same coaching staff next year because it'll mean they have the same roster. It'll mean continuity in recruiting and all these things. If Pat Chun were of that mind, it's now really hard to put that offer in front of Jedd Fisch. This loss makes it hard for Washington to do, if you think that's the right thing, for Washington to do the right thing, because fans are now so upset, and the optics of announcing an extension like this week or next are totally different than they would have been if they just found a way to beat Wisconsin.
Oh, let's dig into that for a second. Because my initial reaction to that is that I would prefer Jedd be back next year. Like I do want him back in large part because of what will come back. The offense that will come back, and I think you've got some young defensive players that are getting better. If that's Washington's goal, don't you just take the short-term hit to get the long-term stability? My feeling is that there's been nothing done because the hand is still being played. We're seeing exactly where things are going to go. And does that mean that Jedd's not quite ready to sort of make a decision? He wants to see what might be out there after the season. I guess it's possible it means that Washington isn't totally sold on him, though that is much harder for me to see at this point. But maybe because my feeling is the best time for a school or a team to make an extension with a player is when you're sort of the guy you're negotiating with, his negotiating power is at its lowest. And hell, maybe you can even wait 2 weeks to announce it. But if you can get it done, get it done.
Yeah. And I should say, like, my opinion on whether they should or shouldn't extend Jedd Fisch is not going to be altered by one bad loss.
Yeah.
And it's silly to think that it ever would be, but like the world we live in, the reaction on social media and the reaction from fans and the way that like an announcement of that kind would be received, it does matter. You could think that it shouldn't. And you could think that like, well, they were 6-2. I mean, God, you felt like the Jedd Fisch era was at its high point coming out of the Illinois game, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was the most complete game they'd played relative to their performance and the opponent. I still don't think Illinois is like great, but they were a top 25 team with some experience that a lot of people were high on this season. And they came to Seattle, and Washington pretty much dominated the game. And I don't know, so however you felt about that, that's just all gone because of one bad loss. It's a terrible loss. I mean, a terrible loss. There's just no way they should have lost that game. By the way, they were not the furthest left team on our favorite Parker Fleming "Did we really get beat that bad" graph, but they were like fourth from the left. Wisconsin was one of the winners that was well below the line, meaning Washington out-success rated them, even as poorly as they played on offense. And on a down-by-down basis, I think Bill Connolly's post-game win expectancy had Wisconsin at like 19%, meaning if you played this game with the same statistical outcomes 100 more times, Washington would have won like 81 of them. So none of that means anything other than like they lost a game they should have won. But I don't know. I already didn't think that Washington was like in a position to make a huge financial statement and lock up Jedd Fisch. And I didn't think Jedd Fisch was at a point where he was going to sign anything that wasn't just deal of a lifetime, outrageously good. Nobody could say no to this. I think that the loss reinforces that, especially from Washington's end, though I kind of think it would end up irrelevant because I don't think Jedd Fisch feels like he's in a position where he has to sign anything.
if you're Washington is the ideal, if you're Washington is the ideal situation, he comes back without a new deal. And I'm asking that to you directly, but also to the listeners. Because that would be my ideal, is he comes back on the same deal, and that you offer it to him in that situation. You get the benefit of this offense coming back with a quarterback who's been here 3 seasons, is a returning starter, a potential Heisman Trophy candidate. You get a defense that is playing a number of true freshmen that look really good. Most recently, Rainey Saleh getting out there. I don't know about the beef up front, but I do know that their secondary and their linebackers, they've got some dudes that can move. And sort of see where the chips fall. And if next year they get to the college football playoff and Jedd ends up taking that leaves the door open for him to take a higher paying job. At that point, I think the buyout goes down to $6 million. It's at $10 million up until January 9th of this year, and then it goes down to $6 million. So be it. I'll take that trade. Am I wrong about that? I don't feel a desire to, or an urgency. I'd like him back next year, but I don't want to have it, that doesn't mean that I'm like really hoping that he's still the coach here 6 years from now, because I'm not sure how likely that is.
Yeah, I mean, I'd throw that possibility all the way out the window, but I think you'd say that about most coaches anymore. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing, though, I'm gonna totally contradict myself. I kind of feel like, at least at the Power 2 level, college football is moving swiftly enough toward an NFL model that this volatility that Washington has experienced, and maybe they won't experience it again this offseason, maybe they will, is kind of in its final stages. And the game is moving more toward, Curt Cignetti's going to stay at Indiana for all the reasons we talked about. And if you're at a school where the resources are at a certain level and NIL is at a certain level and you like it there and the relationship with administration is healthy and your family's happy, all those other things, why would you leave for the slightly bigger brand? Mm-hmm. Why leave Indiana with the support that you've got? Because it seems like it's at a pretty high level for Penn State. Mm-hmm. Why leave Washington for, I don't know. Ohio State's kind of its own thing. If you can ever be the head coach at Ohio State, you should probably do that. So there is a tier of school where they can still kind of have their pick. But, like you mentioned in your column, you're not going to head coach of the Minnesota Vikings isn't going to leave to go coach the Giants, right?
So, yeah, that would be my question. And this kind of takes what
is what I'm saying.
Yeah, this takes what you're saying and twists it a little bit. I agree with the idea that there is going to be some more stability that gets in place at the Power 2 level. That the top 2 conferences, kind of the top tiers of college football, things are going to settle down. My question would be, does there come a point where having a more NFL type contract for coaches, because NFL coaching contracts, they don't have buyouts. Coaches don't leave for a better, higher paying job. You're going to work for that team until that team fires you. There are only a couple of exceptions. Sean Payton and John Gruden. John Gruden got traded from the Raiders to the Buccaneers because the Raiders did not want to give him, and this is fully 25 years ago now, Al Davis didn't want to give Gruden the raise that he wanted. And so Gruden ended up, okay, then I'm going to go, got permission to negotiate with the Buccaneers, who then traded draft picks to get him. Peyton took a year off. But in general, you're not going to move to another job. You work there until you get fired. Does it come to a point where that kind of stability that would offer becomes a selling point for a coach? Obviously, the reason that doesn't exist in college football is because coaches, it's much more hierarchical. There are tiers of college programs. the 32 NFL teams are at a much more equal standing than even the 40 teams that are in the Power 2 conference, like the top 2 conferences. But, I mean, and this is where Jedd's sort of protests or like his objection to the way the game goes makes me angry, because I was like, if you don't want that, there are ways to eliminate that. You're just choosing not to do them. And what you would prefer is that everybody operate with your best interest in mind, which is, as I've discovered over the course of my life, not the way the world tends to work. Like you can't complain about speculation if speculation is part of the reason that has fueled your rise as a coach. So I have wondered that if Jedd Fisch were to leave, would you be better off? Hey, I'm going to give you a 4-year guaranteed contract. You're going to receive every penny of this, but you're not going to be able to take another job in that time. And the coach in turn is able to use that as a recruiting, like the stability that goes within that. I don't know. I get the sense that that's probably too far off. But what Cignetti did, while it's still within the college football framework, is much more attuned to that of like, I'm not going anywhere. This is the job I want to have. And if that's the case, I'm not going to play these constant sort of arm wrestling games. I'll be interested to see what happens with Rule's contract, because he did, but it's a 2-year extension from what I saw. Does that eliminate any possibility that he's going anywhere? I would tend to think that it does, but it's an interesting, I'm not sure what the next chapter or the next sort of evolution of coaching contracts will look like.
And Matt Rule's, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe was kind of dependent on incentives, right?
Yeah. There's part of me that wonders how much of that was just to end the questions right now, and how much of this is the definitive answer, okay, he's staying. But it's tied to incentives. I don't know enough about the specifics of that contract to say it did not strike me on first glance like Cignetti's, which Cignetti's contract was like, he's not going anywhere. Like this answers that question for this coaching cycle.
I just have it in front of me here. Rule's new deal, the 2-year extension, didn't change his salary. It added an incentive for making the college football playoff. And I kind of think that's where coach contracts are headed. Like he said a lot of things, but you've got Louisiana's governor out here saying that the contract of the next LSU head coach will look a lot different than Brian Kelly's did, because they're on the hook for 50 some million that they're trying very hard not to pay him, that he is shockingly insisting that they should pay him because they put it in writing and agreed to it. A crazy concept, I know.
Have you seen, I mean, I think Louisiana State's LSU's argument amounts to, we didn't fire you, you just stopped coming to work.
Yeah, I think
it's like, well, the athletic director told me I wasn't coming back. And they're like, well, the athletic director didn't have the power to make that decision. I can't imagine that's going to stand up in court.
Yeah, they're trying to say that, like, well, we didn't actually tell you that you were fired. You stopped coming, so we're going to fire you for cause.
Well, but this guy, my boss told me to stop coming. Well, he wasn't empowered to do that.
Yeah. All right. I don't know, man. If I were him, I'd probably just like agree to waive the duty to mitigate clause in exchange for a 30-some million lump sum and then go retire somewhere tropical. But I love that he's fighting for the whole thing too.
I do too. I kind of like it.
As much as like I think it's ridiculous that coaches get paid what they get paid to not coach. At some point, the school's got to learn. Like, don't agree to the buyout then. And yes. I felt this is exactly what I said when the whole Jimmy Lake, Ruparake Fuavai thing went down. And could they fire him for cause? Could they? And they decided not to. And which, like, no way should Washington have tried to fire Jimmy Lake for cause for that. That would have been so ridiculous, and it would have been such an egregious shirking of responsibility. You would have been doing it not because you felt like his behavior, oh my God, was so outlandish that we just can't have him. You went out in public and said that wasn't even why you were firing him, because it wasn't, by the way. They fired him because the program was a disaster. They fired him because nothing was going right, because the vibes were all the way off. And if that's the case, pay the man his money. Like you made the decision to hire him. It didn't go well. you've got like a flashpoint here because he shoved a kid, but you're firing him because he's not a good coach and he's not winning enough and the program is in the dumpster. So you got to pay him his $10 million. This is how it goes.
In general, I agree with you. I feel that institutions, like when you go find an excuse to do something that benefits you, if you proceed like the most nitpicky lawyer, that it tends to create a culture that will come back around and bite you. However, I might not have minded if they'd hosed Jimmy Lake. Strictly on self-interest because I didn't like the guy the way he treated people. In general, you're right. In this case, I wouldn't have minded if he'd gotten stuck with it.
It would have been the wrong thing to do.
It would have been the wrong thing to do, but it would have been for the right reasons.
I'm always going to fall on the side of like wanting schools to learn their lesson and get their comeuppance for these financial commitments.
If you let them get out of it, they're just going to keep doing that again.
So are we going to see movement toward a more like incentive laden contract structure for coaches where these like enormous guaranteed sums, first of all, just these enormous guaranteed sums as their salaries for doing their jobs, but then also those same enormous guaranteed sums that we pay them to not do their job after a school decides to fire them. Like, are we going to move past that at some point? I would like to see too. I mean, in the NFL, like you can't even interview a coordinator for your open head coach position without getting permission.
Yeah, well, you have to notify him. If it's a lateral move, you have to get permission.
Right. They don't have to grant you permission, but you do have to. You have to.
Tell them that you're going to talk to him. They can't block. If you're looking for a head coach and you want to interview a coordinator, they can't block you from doing that. But you do have to notify him, and there is a structure to it.
And then what do those NFL teams do when they do those interviews? They announce publicly that they have completed an interview with offensive coordinator of the so-and-sos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What a concept.
Yeah. I mean, it's the question. I do think it might get worse before it gets better in college coaching. If you look at the number of vacancies and you look at potential candidates for those spots, I think coaches are going to have a lot of negotiating power, which generally tends to, you get a school, no matter what the governor of Louisiana says and how the next contract at LSU looks like, you're going to see some schools that Washington gave Jedd Fisch a lot of what he wanted. Jedd Fisch was in a very strong negotiating position because of when it was in the hiring cycle. What's his buyout if he got fired during this regular season? Is like $33 million. And his buyout to leave right now is, if it's before the January 9th date, is 10. Like it's written to his benefit, which reflects the power dynamics at the time.
What's Ian got for us?
Ian's question, he gives a noble effort. Our weekly conversation with IP McFarland.
So the thing with this team is the way the coaches have looked at Rowe. I got nothing. See you next week.
He punted! He punted!
Was that an homage to the football game we watched on Saturday?
Maybe. He just punted. He punted on third down.
Ian with the third down punt. You know what? I was kind of thinking, I'm like, I hope like this doesn't spawn too deep of a conversation, because like we're already pushing 50 minutes here and we got to do our Pac-12 power rankings. And so Ian fit the vibe of the show. I feel like, look, the big topics right now are, oh my God, they lost to Wisconsin and what's going to happen with Jedd Fisch.
Yep.
So,
can I ask one general question about coaching searches? And this occurred to me this morning when I was walking my Shar-Pei Simba. We were approaching Joan of Arc, the little parklet that's at the end of my street. There's a beautiful statue there made by a female sculptor. As I was looking up at Joan of Arc, I thought to myself, You think John Gruden's going to get hired this cycle?
Oh, it's college football's favorite rumor. The groomers. Every cycle, it seems. Does he want a college job?
He's not getting an NFL job. And I'm not certain he's not willing to coach again. He's just willing to have this be it. He's working at Barstool right now.
I'm not sure like a Power 4 job is for him, or Power 2 job at least is for him.
If Lane leaves, Ole Miss would hire him in a heartbeat.
You think so?
I do.
What makes him such an attractive candidate for a major college football program in 2025?
He's charismatic.
Yeah.
Donors are going to freaking love him. He does have a certain rapport with quarterbacks, right? His ability to coach and connect with good players, that's real, right? If you watched his quarterback camp with any of the guys that are entering the draft, he can talk the talk. I don't know about his stamina for recruiting, but I tend to think that you're going to get quality quarterbacks there.
Yeah, I don't think the head coach really, like if you build the personnel department right and have the right assistants, I don't know that the head coach needs to be like a everyday recruiter anymore. And he's John Gruden, right? Like the name will recruit.
Yeah. Although with Belichick, you certainly wonder, like you got to make sure that.
Well, that goes back to, do you have the right personnel people in place?
I just wonder. I look at these jobs that are open, and I legitimately, okay, who are going to take these jobs?
Yeah,
like who's LSU going to go hire? Are they going to hire somebody like Joe Brady that was a former coordinator?
Yeah, I mean, his brief tenure at LSU is like so legendary,
right?
I feel like they'd be fine with that, right? Or is he not experienced enough?
Yeah. But they would, but there's not, I don't get the sense that there are rising assistants that people are hot for in the same way there used to be off of Saban's staff.
Yeah. It's like you and Ian and I have a text thread, and like, what did I kind of half jokingly said the other day? Like, there's no good teams, there's no good quarterbacks, and there's no good coaches. And of course, I don't mean that completely literally, but what you're going to see is there's so many good enough jobs open that like they can't all be happy with who they hire.
Exactly. Which makes me wonder if somebody's going to get frisky. Kind of like, you remember when Tennessee had that disaster job search, what they were going to hire Schiano, and then they were going to hire Mike Leach, and like the athletic director isn't able to make this hire. I wonder if we're going to see something. Is that how they ended up with Pruitt, or was that to replace Pruitt?
No, that was Pruitt.
Okay.
And then Heupel replaced Pruitt.
Yeah.
They brought in oh my God. Their national title winning Phil Fulmer. Phil took over.
Came in to take control.
Yeah. So that was a disaster. And I remember Mike Leach did an interview not long after that where he kind of opened up about it and was like, oh, I mean, they were talking like crazy money. And so I had to, like, of course, like, why? Or was he talking about that? Or was that when he took the job at Mississippi State? I don't quite remember. A lot of text messages got released from the Tennessee AD at the time. And he was like,
there's a reporter who's still working who looks real bad. And I thought when I saw those text messages, that dude would never be employed again. And boy, was I wrong.
Oregon holds on to number 1.
Absolutely does.
Power rankings. And I wrote this in my day after story, but like forget about can Washington beat Oregon on November 29th? Like what a big picture statement about where these two programs are at, that Washington goes to play Wisconsin in the cold, rainy snow. A Wisconsin team that like basically can't move the ball. By the way, did you catch Jedd Fisch in his press conference say, like, our defense did a great job against an offense that we knew we were going to be able to stop?
Yeah.
And like, that should not be controversial at all. It's just flat out true. Yeah. Just a flat out true thing about a team that they did not beat. Anyway, Washington goes and loses that game, scores only 10 points, loses 13-10 to a team that was 2-6 that had scored 3 touchdowns in 5 Big Ten games coming into that game. Oregon goes on the road to play a tough-ass Iowa team.
Yep.
Also in bad weather.
Awful weather.
Just a very difficult place to win. Certainly in November, certainly in classic Midwest Big Ten weather when Iowa's got a top 20 team. And they put together a last-minute scoring drive to get in field goal range and kick a field goal with 3 seconds left to win by the most Iowa game score ever, 18-16. Didn't play great. Won't be on their, best of in terms of like on a play-by-play basis. All that throw by Dante Moore on the last drive. My goodness. Found a way to win. Like any win at Iowa is a good win. Any win really on the road in the Big Ten is a good win. That's the difference between a team that belongs in the playoff and a team that doesn't.
Yes.
And so, hey, at Husky Stadium on November 29th, could things change? Sure. We know how different this team is at home versus on the road. I'm fully planning to predict Oregon to win that game. But just from a big picture sense, like both teams go to the Midwest to play in bad weather on the same weekend. One of them is playing a top 20 team. One of them is playing a team that cannot move the ball. Washington finds a way to lose. Oregon finds a way to win.
And Oregon didn't have its best receiver. Everybody knew they were going to run the ball. They still averaged like 5 yards a carry. It was an impressively physical win by Oregon.
And then they dropped a spot in the AP poll.
Yeah, I'm done with the AP poll. Like I'm done with it. It's stupid. Yeah, that was extremely dumb. If you're a Husky fan, the one bright piece of news is that it's possible Dante Moore is so good that he's going to come out after this year. It's maybe 3 years. It's possible. There's a shot he's a top 10 pick. That dude looks good.
USC led by punter Sam Heward.
USC is definitely at least number 3, maybe number 4. And the reason is because that is shameful. You snuck your backup quarterback into the game as a punter against Northwestern. That is some sorry shit.
It's pretty like I was listening to the Split Zone Duo podcast, and they were like, it's kind of impressive like how little regard Lincoln Riley has for like the rules and norms of game administration. They cheated the injury report a few weeks back. Did you see that?
Yep.
And they might still get fined for this. The Big Ten came out and said that not the Sam Heward play itself, but they should have been penalized when their actual number 80 punter entered the game later. You can't have 2 players at the same position wear the same jersey number. So the Sam Heward play like stood. That was legit. But then when they brought in the actual player who wears that number later in the game, that was when the penalty should have been assessed. And I think they might still get fined for it.
And Lincoln came out this week. I saw a picture with him with his backward hat, or video of him with his backward hat, saying how it was legal. If you change guys' numbers, that is the most hairy high school, like little man thing you can possibly do. So actually, they're down to number 5. USC is number 5 in the Pac-12 power rankings for me because of their shenanigans.
So who's 2, 3, and 4?
Utah, Arizona State. Then we start to get into a little bit of trouble.
You can't put Washington ahead of USC. Come on.
Okay, USC's number 4, Washington's number 5.
I'm with you on Utah and ASU. I'm more amused by Lincoln Riley's shenanigans.
Really?
I just think, I don't know, it's kind of funny.
He pisses me off.
You don't like that Sam Heward got a completion in a Big Ten football game?
I don't like that they changed his jersey number. I really think that is some of the most loathsome stuff to do.
It's a little dirty.
Oh, it's awful. It's what a terrible. There was a coach in Kinko when I covered it that people would accuse him of doing that, and I always just thought, like, what is wrong with you? Like, why would you possibly, like, you're playing shenanigans with jersey numbers? Like, that's pathetic.
Was Washington's loss at Wisconsin bad enough to merit the honorary 1-week basement job?
Not all the way. No.
All right, I'll drop him to 5.
Maybe to
Arizona's-
6, and you could put Arizona because Arizona's 6-3.
Yeah, Arizona 6, Cal. Well, did Cal warrant jumping Arizona?
It was an exciting win they had.
Yeah,
They still got that. Wow, but San Diego State's good.
yeah. That. Then they lost to Hawaii though, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll say that. Cal can jump Arizona. Cal, then Arizona. Win over Louisville is pretty impressive for Cal.
I'm torn between. We know who's last. Good Lord. The bottom third of these rankings has been so bleak all year. I almost want to like reward UCLA for only losing by a touchdown to Nebraska, although Nebraska is playing with its backup quarterback.
Oh, and you've got Stanford losing to UNC.
How about the Huskies, man? Jim Mora's Huskies. Jim L. Mora's Huskies.
It occurred to me for a half second earlier this week when I was thinking about potential replacements. I was like, if Jedd left, would you go with Jim Mora?
You're not the only one. Gotten that question.
The answer is no.
Wouldn't mind some dirt bags, right?
No, won't work. Yeah. Let's go from the bottom up. Oregon State, and then Colorado, then Washington State. Cougs had a bye.
Yeah, and Washington State was still last seen losing to Oregon State.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Colorado loses by a touchdown at West Virginia. They're 3-7. They're 1-6 in Big 12 play. So yeah, I'm fine with Wazoo ahead of them.
Yeah. And then above, then Wazoo, then Stanford. Yeah, that feels about right.
7 bowl teams, bowl
Yeah.
eligible teams, and
Yeah.
that's probably going to be it.
Unless the
Well,
Bruins
no.
go on a heck of a run. They got 3 left.
Wazoo
Ohio
will get
State,
there.
Washington, USC.
Wazoo
not
will get
making
there. They'll
They're
win
not
2-0.
making it. What'd you make of the announcement that they're going to play at SoFi?
I get why some university administrator might think that's a good idea, but I don't want to go watch a UCLA game at SoFi.
Yeah, that's what I was going to. I mean, I get like Rose Bowl's a long way from campus and it just, but is there I'm trying to think of one situation where a college team plays in an NFL venue and that's worked.
College team in an NFL venue.
When
Yeah, I mean,
Washington
we saw.
when Washington spent those couple years playing at Seahawks Stadium, it just felt it just felt completely different. I've spent a lot of time in the Seahawks Stadium. It felt like squatting. It felt like squatting in that stadium.
That's what I was going to say. Like, you saw what it looked like for a season there. You saw what it looked like at Levi's Stadium for the Pac-12 championship game. That was just one-off every year. That was not a good atmosphere for that.
The early season games, like I've gone to the game down in Atlanta when they played Auburn, when the Huskies played Auburn, or when you see kickoff games at like AT&T Stadium. For those one-off events, it feels okay. But
UNLV plays at Allegiant Stadium.
Which seems fine for UNLV.
Yeah.
But like if you're trying to rebuild a program, which is what they're trying to do at UCLA, I just don't see how being the third most interesting team that plays at that stadium is going to feel like yours at all.
Zero character.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing collegiate about UCLA now asking its students to leave because it's closer, but it's not close.
It's not close. Yeah.
Now asking its students to leave campus to go watch it play its home games in this like soulless corporate venture where like, I don't love having to go out to the Rose Bowl just because it's a trek, but like at least it's the Rose Bowl.
And it's
At least
beautiful
there's
when you get in there.
history there.
Yeah.
And it's not, the Rose Bowl for UCLA home football games does not feel in any way the same as the Rose Bowl on January 1st. I'm not saying that, but you at least know, like, there's been a lot of like big time, memorable college football played in this stadium, both in the bowl game and by the UCLA Bruins over the years. And, I don't know, so far, and I wouldn't say that if they just magically were able to build an on-campus stadium and play there, great, that's on campus. That's automatically collegiate just by virtue of existing where it exists. So I don't know. I don't like it, but then I'm a grumpy old man.
Yeah, me too.
Who resists change.
Me too.
Purdue, huh?
Yeah, let's go. If they don't win this one, it's really going to be hell to pay next week.
We haven't even Jonah Coleman, their best running back, is hurt. And I kind of sounds like Jedd Fisch thinks he'll make it to play in this game, but it's not a sure thing. He said he's questionable. He's got a knee injury. He kind of got landed on or pulled on. Jedd Fisch said rolled up on a screen that gained 11 or 12 yards. I went back and watched it. I don't know that I saw rolled up on in the traditional sense, but you could, obviously injured his knee on that play, limped off, did not return to the game. They thought so they put a brace on it and thought he was going to be able to go after halftime. I saw him running sprints, trying to put pressure on it, and he just couldn't. So that's an issue. It doesn't sound like they're super optimistic about Drew Azzopardi making it back to play at right tackle. Landon Hatchett's got a hand wrist injury, I think, and wore the big old ball cast on it and was snapping with his left hand, and it just sounded like it just wasn't really, maybe not the snapping itself, but trying to play center and kind of only having one hand wasn't really working.
Do not have a center play with a broken hand. I've seen that before. It's a bad idea. I would prefer that they not play Jonah Coleman for the next 2 games. Let him get right, or as right as he can be. Perhaps he is going to demand to play, and I kind of feel like he's earned. If he's really adamant that he can tough through the pain and play, he's probably earned that right. But I actually think the best idea for him would be to take the next 2 games off to see how healthy he can get for Oregon. But that's just one man's opinion.
Yeah. Denzel Boston, no sure thing either. He obviously finished the game at far less than 100% with a rolled ankle. Sounds like Rashawn Clark is working through something. Mikel Esteen's working through something, though they expect him to play too. God, am I missing anybody? They're beat up. They're beat up again. I think they felt like they were pretty healthy coming off the bye week. They got Carver Willis and John Mills back, and that was such a big deal. And now, boom, 2 other starting offensive linemen, at least questionable for this game, if not worse. So I'd say it's a good thing that they're coming home, and it's a good thing they're playing Purdue. There are several other games on their schedule that I think you would look a lot different results-wise if they rolled in with the same availability report that they might have for this one. So I don't know, man. Purdue is the kind of bad team.
Watch your mouth, Christian. Don't you dare do this.
Listen. They're the kind of bad team that has had enough close-ish results and enough scores that make you, even in defeat, that make you go, oh, okay. They haven't won a Big Ten game, but they were right there against Rutgers. I think they were within a touchdown or less of Michigan. They covered against Ohio State, scored a touchdown against Ohio State even. Just something Washington did not do. That they have the feel of a team that's gonna get one eventually. And so Washington should have its guard fully up. To say nothing of the ties there with this obviously being Ryan Walters' former employer, Washington linebackers coach Brian Odom, his brother is the head coach at Purdue. Their special teams coordinator Chris Petrilli just worked there also with Ryan Walters. So some Purdue ties. I know X-Ray Alexander was one of 2 players made available to the media this week. Talked about being pretty fired up to go face Purdue, and maybe this is a game where the defense rallies around Ryan Walters a little bit and says, let's get those guys back.
Washington should approach this game with all due respect, taking nothing for granted. And if Washington loses this game, you're going to hear a very different approach from me next week than I was of taking this loss at Wisconsin in stride as one of those lessons that needs to toughen up a team along the way. My outlook would be profoundly different if they don't win this game.
Came back from Ohio State, beat Maryland. Came back from Michigan, beat Illinois. Can they come back from Wisconsin and beat Purdue? That's the challenge. Enjoy it however you watch it, wherever you watch it. Thank you to everybody listening to us anywhere. Thanks to those watching today early on YouTube. We'll talk to you next week.
This is a football nightmare, brother.